Hi, welcome to this Cleaning Matters Roundtable discussion on washroom hygiene. I'm Catherine Hackett, editor of Cleaning Matters magazine. Today we're going to be talking about the challenges of keeping away from home washrooms clean and hygienic, the solutions, services and training that can help you in your buildings, and we'll also be looking at the future of the washroom. I'm pleased to be joined by Denise Hanson, Head of Technical Services at the British Institute of Cleaning Science, and Nikki Bigart, UK Sales Manager at Evans Vanodine. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
So perhaps if we just leap straight in and talk about the importance of the washroom. Cleaning professionals often talk about the washroom as the front window of a business. Do you usually think that's the case, Denise?
For me, it's where you can make the largest impact when you take a new contract. Because if you can concentrate on getting the toilets right on that first night, people see that and think, oh, I've done something. So it is the first step. And it's so important because everybody uses the washrooms. And all of us notice them.
Absolutely. I mean, I would agree with Denise that the washroom is very much, whilst you can have a fantastic dining out experience or a visit to an office or a leisure facility, but if the washrooms, very often it's the last place you use, so therefore it's got very much the last impression. And if it's dirty or if it's not very well looked after, then that actually can reflect really on really leaving you a sort of lasting impression, an experience that maybe the rest of the company doesn't really value the washroom side of the business, definitely.
And do you think social media is also having an impact on the importance of the washroom for, say, people visiting hotels and restaurants?
Absolutely. I think with the increase in social media platforms, Twitter, TripAdvisor, people now, before they go and book anything, will very often go on these sites to see, and they will look for keywords like clean, sparkling, fresh. Probably are key in terms of hotel bedrooms, the washrooms, and just the general sort of cleanliness reported back is hugely powerful in making that decision to book or not.
I think for Airbnb, as you said, the word sparkling.
Yeah.
And you'll get people that say sparkling clean and you think, oh, okay, that's a worry. Well, actually, I'm still taking the cleaner disinfectant with me, but never mind, that's a personal issue. It is so key when you go to a restaurant, for me. Mm-hmm. First place I go is the ladies' toilets, and if they're not clean, I don't eat in the restaurant. Because if the toilets aren't clean, what does the kitchen look like? What are the back of house areas like? That is your shop window really, and it's that first impression.
And do you think washroom design is also becoming a key part of the visitor experience in places such as high-end hotels and restaurants?
I just really wish that every architect had to go on a 6-week cleaning course, because some of the fittings they put in place are just ridiculous.
I think with particularly at the high end, the premium end of the market, and if you take the large cities, Birmingham, London, Manchester, where you've got the spend is far greater in dining out, then I think people look for funky and a bit contemporary, and with that you're getting very different surfaces. And as a manufacturer of chemicals, that poses phenomenal challenges because the traditional chemicals don't always work, but you have to keep your washroom clean. So whilst it's great to see, and people now, it's part of the whole concept of, particularly in Europe as well, you see quite funky washrooms. You see them posted on social media as well, but it does pose a challenge because you ultimately have to keep it clean. And those surfaces very often, particularly like marble, stainless steel, particular stones can be porous. You can't use your traditional chemicals, and they can actually create more harbour for bacteria to grow, and it is more of a challenge for cleaning processes.
So we'll be looking at quite a lot more at the challenges later.
Yeah, often when you get a call and they'll say, how do you clean this? And as you just said, they'll put marble in a hard water area, so you've got scale. And marble really doesn't like descaler.
Yeah,
and there's no thought there about actually how they're going to maintain on the long term. So it might look beautiful for 3 months, and then you've got something that you really can't clean.
So circling back to looking at businesses making a good first impression, if they don't, it can potentially be very damaging for that business and its viability.
I think it is damaging, and also the supermarkets tend to have public toilets available. And certainly over the last few years, there's been a decline in standards in those in some of the large supermarkets. And frankly, I don't shop there anymore. And I know that's a personal thing, and I do think in our industry, unfortunately, you never turn the button off.
No, you're always looking.
You can't go somewhere and not.
Yeah.
But it does impact.
It does, and I think for me, and also for how we advise our customers and end user customers, we really do stress the importance when training their teams, their cleaning utility teams, about the importance of making sure that washroom is sparkling, and it's clean and it's fresh. So as soon as you have a very nice meal, or you've stayed, or you come in and you book into your hotel room and you walk into the washroom, you should be able to feel that the whole experience, you feel valued, but the whole customer visit experience should all really translate directly into the washroom as well. Not just about the food, but it should be also the end, the last point that you leave that hotel or restaurant should actually be, I'm definitely going to go back there again, and I'm going to recommend those to my friends and family and colleagues. Is really important.
So apart from shaping a visitor's first impression of a business, what would you say are some of the other consequences of a poorly cleaned washroom?
It depends where the washroom is, and it depends how many people use it. But certainly if it's in the workplace, you've got one person that's got an illness, it's highly likely that's going to go through the workforce. So your sick rate, your churn, the fact that people aren't impressed with what they're supplying is quite key. Because if you can't clean a washroom for me when I use that at work, you're not really valuing me as a staff member.
Yeah, I would agree with Denise in that respect, that workplaces in particular, if the washrooms are not maintained, then you as an employee tend to feel undervalued, that you're almost just a commodity. You're there to sort of work and that's it, effectively. And therefore, you don't engage and encourage people to effectively wash their hands at point of entry into the office and at point of exit as well, which is paramount, particularly at certain months of the year when you get influenza, perhaps norovirus, gastroenteritis, particularly as we're heading into the sort of warmer season, hopefully, barbecues, etc. Then you have higher incidence of food poisoning, and that's where it's really important that you make sure that you have good facilities to allow people to linger. You really want people to linger. I know it sounds a strange word to use in washrooms, but it is paramount. You want people to use, so by effectively giving them nice hand soaps that don't make their hands feel rough. You give them aftercare products, particularly if they're using their hands in the kitchen a lot for washing dishes. Then if you give the whole 1, 2, 3 process, from not just washing, sanitizing, but the aftercare conditioning creams, then you're more likely to get people to engage and effectively carry out good hand hygiene protocols.
So besides the sort of spread of germs and employee well-being, visitor well-being, are there any sort of other safety hazards that can occur from a poorly cleaned washroom?
Yeah, I think if you've got the residue left, any residues, particularly in floors, if they aren't properly used, if chemicals are designed to be used diluted at correct dilution to effectively clean, that's very much paramount to their efficacy. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't dilute it at the correct dilution rate, you effectively could just be using water. If you concentrate, then you even have a greater danger, because what happens is you have a high residue of chemical on the surface that could potentially become a slip hazard, not just for staff but for visitors, diners, etc. And also over time that will build up and actually discolour and actually damage the surface as well.
And one of the most common things we see where they're not cleaned properly is people leaving down the toilet cleaner. So it's left in the bowl, which actually damages the porcelain in the bowl, but it's also a risk for somebody then using that toilet, because if they're on certain medications, it can change your urine flow. If they've drunk something as simple as a can of Coke, it can actually make the urine more acidic, which can react with what's in the bowl. And it's all a danger to the end user, which it just shouldn't be. So not only does it damage the porcelains, it damages the person as well.
And there's quite a lot of examples as well, isn't there, of incidents occurring?
There's a lot of examples of people using products incorrectly and also using products together, which shouldn't be used together. And it comes back to training and poor training or lack of training. And also people don't read the labels. Sometimes they can't, and other times they just don't read the label. And if you react with certain products, you're going to end up with a form of mustard gas, which can kill you. And still, I think on the last set of figures, about 12 people in the UK die a year from mixing toilet cleaners.
Wow, that was going to be my next question actually. How big a problem is washroom hygiene? Do you think that we as a nation do it well?
I think it's improved. I think it's still a long way off. I think also it depends on the sector as well. I think the advent of social media, the people rating and seeking out online has vastly made the hospitality sector have to wake up, because very quickly people, no holds barred, will actually post online immediately, even sometimes during their stay. They will make it known that they are not happy. So I think from that respect, I think we've seen some improvements.
And when you mention training, so often you'll see somebody go into a washroom and the first thing they'll clean is a toilet, which is the most heavily contaminated area, and they want to get it out of the way. And it's the wrong way of cleaning. So you should spray the toilet first and give it the contact time. And, we talked earlier about the fact that descalers need a minimum of 5 minutes contact time. It doesn't work by putting it in the toilet bowl and attacking it with a brush. It needs some time actually to dissolve the lime scale. But also it needs some time to kill the germs. So from the operative's point of view, going in, flushing, lowering the water line, putting the product down, then applying the product to the other areas in the washroom, and then cleaning from clean to dirty, gives it the contact time automatically, which means I'm safe as the operative actually cleaning the area. Because you don't know what you're moving, you don't know what the person who's used the bathroom has or hasn't got.
Yeah, because very often people are not going to check into Intel and say, I'm not feeling very well, I have norovirus. So as a consequence, travelling on a ferry, on a train, you've got people potentially who are not 100% well, so therefore they're interacting. You're talking hundreds, maybe thousands of people if you're travelling on trains, coming through, checking in hotels, going into shopping malls, etc. So it is very important in terms of the chemicals that you use have to be right. But as Denise rightly says, we can't stress enough as a manufacturer of chemicals, hygiene chemicals, is that the contact time is paramount, and it is so often overlooked, and that really is where the efficacy of any product that has to work as a cleaner and a disinfectant is paramount. And that's the difference to being well cleaned and not being well cleaned.
And so many times the ranges that you use, the descaler depends on your area in the country. Some people have got soft water, a lot of people haven't. You've got more hard water area. The descaler, if it can work with the disinfectant you're using, you can put them together. If it can't do that, and so many ranges you can't, you're adding time to the cleaning role, which just isn't there anymore, because so many people have taken cleaning out. And it is a huge cost because we're so labour dependent. It does make me smile when they say, oh, the robots are coming. Find me one that cleans a toilet, please.
I think what Denise is correct is quite rightly striking a note is that it comes down to cost. Why we do it, whilst it's improving the standard of washrooms, we tend to, it's very often an afterthought. We spend millions of pounds in front of house, making it look fabulous, the lobby of an office building, the offices, and then the washrooms are tucked away in the back. We are very often pulled in at the very end of when it's generally a building is either about to be commissioned and rolled out within 2 days of staff arriving, hotels, etc. And it's a bit of a frustration because by then all the surfaces, etc., are in, and you're having to build an operating process for the cleaning teams and train them in a very short time as well. So it's quite a challenge, but it is getting better. But I think we've still got a long way, and I think it's, again, can't reinforce enough, it's our responsibility as manufacturers and organisations like BICSc to educate people so that they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and the consequences, I think, can't be stressed enough of if they don't, what are the potential consequences.
We'll always get the queries when we train toilet cleaning, well, we haven't got the time for that. Well, actually, if you train it properly, in a logical manner, it is effective and it's efficient. It doesn't take any more time to clean them properly than it does to clean them poorly if you know what you're doing. But so many people assume that you can clean. You clean at home. It's not the same when you're taking somebody else's health into consideration. And also things, again, back to architects, sorry, my favourite people, please give us cleaning cupboards. Give us cleaning cupboards that have got facilities near the washrooms. So often in the supermarkets, there is a cleaning cupboard near the washrooms, but sometimes there isn't one. It's in the back of the warehouse. Well, good practice would change your water each time you do a different set. You may be walking for 40 minutes to get a bucket of water.
Yeah,
And it's just ridiculous.
I would agree there. So often when we're doing training, we find that the cleaning station where they collect their products from, mix and they make them up, are very much in the basements of hotels, and yet you're looking at, say, hotels that's maybe 20 floors. So what you're finding is the cleaning utility teams are having to mix and make up their chemicals, and then having them to take them up through lifts, etc. And again, that's got consequences because you're putting products, transporting products across a building or a hotel with rather large distances. So, as Denise rightly says, sometimes water is not easily available, so then you find that mopping of floors tends to be used out of the same bucket, and that obviously doesn't help sort of prevent cross-contamination. So, in the use of cloths as well, which I appreciate we're going to come on to later, is very much paramount as to using the correct cloth in the right environment and not using it anywhere else. So whatever you use in the actual toilet area, you certainly don't go out and then use in the bedroom area of a hotel or front of house in a restaurant, because yes, that poses real infection prevention issues. Yeah.
So you mentioned quite a few reasons why businesses are getting it so wrong when it comes to cleaning washrooms. It's understandable in a way. Are they facing a lot more pressures at the moment as businesses?
It comes down to staffing. There's a lot less. You can be on a large office facility where maybe you've got 4,000 to 5,000 people working on there, and the cleaning utility teams are potentially only maybe 4 or 6 people, and they're doing it in shifts, and they're given very specific time. So the challenges for facilities management teams is that they still have to do the same job, but they have to do it with less resource and even less time, which again is a challenge, particularly when you've got different surfaces and you've got sort of large washroom areas, for example, in a call centre, where you may have at peak times, you have a deluge of break times and the washroom is getting hit very, very quickly with a high density of people. That's a big challenge, because then you've got to make sure that it's cleaned during that time, but also during those peak times as well. It's interesting because surveys have shown from Europe that not all office people like office operatives like cleaning teams coming in and cleaning whilst they're working. There's a real correlation between cleaning teams and actually office workers. So what you find is the facilities management teams are having to come in at very different times now, very early in the morning, or coming in the twilight hours. And again, that poses challenges because you don't particularly sometimes get the skill set in that team to be able to do the cleaning tasks that you want.
In actually getting people that want to come and clean washrooms. And we'd say that if people are skilled in cleaning washrooms, isn't that an easier way of actually saying, well, we've got a good washroom cleaner,
Yeah.
and then we've got other people that do the vacuuming, the damp wiping, the general areas. Can we split the skills? Can we make people responsible for areas rather than, I've got one floor, so I'm going to clean kitchens, toilets, desks, and actually look at how you zone things, how you actually work things out. And it is in the planning. We know people haven't got lots of money to throw at it anymore. I don't think they ever did have, if I'm honest. But we still need to have that base level. So there needs to be a level below which you can't go. You know, my boss tells a story that says he was asked to give a 5% cut. Yeah, not a problem. So they said, oh, can we have 10%? Yeah. Oh, it's 20? Yeah, not a problem at all. He said, and they eventually caught on. He said, well, what's the snack? He said, well, how dirty do you want it to be? There is a level that we can't clean any faster.
Yeah.
And cleaning a washroom is the one area when we do productivity rates, our washrooms are the same rate, because whether your washroom's in an office, a hospital or a school, it's got the same things in it. They need to be cleaned to the same standard. There isn't an excuse to say your office toilet should be dirtier than your hospital toilet. They should all be clean and fit for purpose.
And how challenging actually is it to clean a washroom compared to, say, another area?
It depends how sad you are. I prefer to clean washrooms or scrub floors because you can get a result. You can always see what you've done. And you get some sad people like me that like to do it because that every day you go in and every day it wants cleaning and every day you can get a result. But it is finding people who have a bent almost for it.
I would agree that I think that the challenge is it will depend on the nature of where the, as Dean says, where the washroom is. Some washrooms will be more challenging than others. For example, a washroom in a heavy engineering factory, for example, where you've got workers coming off with lots of oils and greases, that's a major challenge, particularly for floors. Point of entry and exit at door points, etc., will be key-ish because you've got heavy oils and greases. So not only have you got the disinfection side, but you've also got the added nature of a lot of different oils and greases. That will take a different product to get rid of that and maintain the cleanliness. But ultimately, washrooms shouldn't be seen as a challenge because there are an amazing array of products out there on the market. But I think it's choosing, as I always say, the right product for the right task and making sure that your staff are trained in how to do it. Then it shouldn't be a challenge at any point. It should be something that they should be able to perhaps not look forward to, but be less of an issue for them. Because ultimately, whether you're an FM part of a team or a cleaner in a small hotel, you still have to clean a number of rooms within a certain time. And I think that's where the challenge comes from, is that you're expected to clean a lot more and a lot faster. So the productivity has to be good. And you only get that with using the right products so that you're not going back and reworking. That is very much paramount.
The right products and the right training. If people use the products correctly with the contact time, and the contact time is so key, because people will say, well, this doesn't work. Time and time again, called out, it doesn't work. Let me show you. There we go. Well, how did you? I gave it the time. And it is having that time of contact. So just that issue of flushing the toilet first, putting the products down, putting the products on all the contact points, and then coming back to that. It's no more time because you're cleaning in a logical way, but it's actually getting that contact time for the product. And without that, you're just flushing down notes.
Okay, moving on to look a bit more closely at infection prevention and control. We've touched on this briefly already, but how important are surface hygiene and hand hygiene in helping to prevent the transmission of germs in the washroom?
We do a course, it's control of cross-contamination. So we're not doing infection prevention. But what we can do as cleaning people is stop it spreading. Now, the first thing we do when people come in, we've actually put the UV gel on our hands.
Oh, yes.
And we shake hands with everybody. And then we show them the light box.
Yeah.
And you can use the dark touch to show everything you've touched. And it just shows the transmission. When we used to clean schools, I was a cleaning contractor for a number of years, and they'd get the outbreaks. We would go in with a good cleaner disinfectant and clean light switches, door points, handrails, and an extra clean of the toilets at lunchtime. And that stops the outbreak. So you can minimise what is there if you've got the right product. And you highlight the right places for actually cleaning. So really it's any touch point, and it does make a huge difference. I think it's something like 60% of people wash their hands and 40% don't, which is a scary statistic.
Yeah, especially as we move forward to reducing the number of plastics and packaging, it becomes even more important about hand hygiene and surface cleanliness and maintaining the hygienic surface. Is that when you go into obviously supermarket, the first place you go is the vegetable counter. And as we go to less and less packaging, then that becomes it's going to become more and more of a challenge for the food retailers in terms of making sure that people, if they do use the washroom, that they are encouraged to wash their hands with good quality hand soap, and then obviously effectively dry their hands as well. So again, that's a challenge, but as Denise rightly says, it's any contact point. I mean, it's amazing. when I flew down yesterday, I'm on a flight and it was completely full. It was about 300 odd people on a flight. And you actually look at the number of points that you're contacting at all times. And you're looking at an airport from the point of view you check in to the point that you're checking through security, you're touching. And all these points are points where bacteria can grow. And particularly when you've got the huge volumes of footfall that you do get. It's the same in a hotel as well, large hotels. People checking in and touching, you know, they've come from their car. They've probably had multiple touch points throughout the day. Lift buttons, gaming machines. These are key areas where people are basically touching, but then they're potentially eating food and then putting their hands to their mouth, etc., touching their face, part of their clothing. And it is very, very key that we hand hygiene more than anything. As long, you know, it's good quality hand skincare product with water, thoroughly rinsing, but also sanitizing as well is paramount. And surface hygiene as well works particularly well because then you have the two-stage. The surfaces should be at least reduced in terms of, you will never totally eradicate bacteria because bacteria is around us all the time. And the very fact of us moving around in a room, we create bacteria and things and move it around. But what we're seeking to do is make sure that using the right product for the right surface and for the right environment, we're minimising that risk.
And washing the hands. We did some work, the HSE labs did some work on different methods of hand washing. And the most effective is warm water, soap.
Yep, without a shadow of a doubt. It's
cold water and soap.
Yeah.
Frighteningly, running your hands under water is more effective than using the hand gels. And everywhere you see the hand gels. So people need to understand they need to wash their hands and use the gel, not just use the gel. And that's education again.
Yeah,
training people.
I would really stress we never advocate hand sanitizers, hand gel sanitizers cannot be used on dirty skin. So your hands need to be clean. It needs to be a clean surface for the hand sanitizer to work effectively. It may reduce, but it certainly will not be effective. And I think that's where it's important. We always advocate good running, clean water with a good skincare product. And obviously effective drying is absolutely important because it's all very well you can clean, wash your hands, and then you'll see it very often people bypass the hand dryer, the hand towels, and they go straight to the point of exit door. Again, they're touching it, wet hands. They will just be passing bacteria again. So it's really not effective.
With a perfect incubator, we're a nice 38 degrees, moisture, food source.
Yeah,
we've got everything that bugs need. So if people don't dry their hands, it is very damaging rather than just taking that extra 2 minutes.
It is, yeah.
So if you had to really drill down and describe the main areas which are contamination hotspots, what would you say they would be in a washroom?
Door handles, taps. Yeah. The toilet itself, to be fair, isn't as, generally speaking, because of the cleaning machine, they actually reckon that your keyboard for the computer is more contaminated than the toilet seat. So the toilets do get the attention, but people do forget the taps, the light pools, the light switches.
Anything where you're having to touch to get the hand towel,
underneath the soap dispenser.
Underneath the soap dispenser. All these points are, you know, as well as the entry and exit points are probably the most vulnerable where you can pass and pick up disease, etc.
And are there any other products and equipment that can help with preventing the spread of germs?
I strongly believe if people are trained properly with, as you say, a good product range, also with cloths that are clearly colour-coded. And I know we've said about colour coding, there isn't an industry standard, which is hugely frustrating. We've just about got everybody to agree that red is for washrooms, although a restaurant I was in the other day disagreed with that because they were using red to clean down the tables. But it is so key that people know. We advocate 2 cloths, one for the actual washroom area, one for the toilet area, and variations of red. Because if you've cleaned the sink with it, you don't want to be cleaning the toilet and then going back to the sink. But just to get that key part over, that these are the only cloths we use in washrooms. would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I would concur with Denise there, because whilst we make the chemicals are only part of the cleaning process. Whether you're using them through, I mean, you're talking about equipment there, Catherine, and what we have is it's a vehicle. You have trigger sprays. You potentially have buckets, obviously filling with mops, etc. And I think we can't stress enough is making sure that you've got the correct dilution. It has to be, and that comes back to reading the label. We make professional use products, and they are designed to be in a professional and industry environment. And the use of cloths will absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, affect the efficacy of any chemical. So, for example, we've all been sitting in restaurants and the people next door to our table leave. The restaurant staff come over and sanitize it. We've seen it all. They spray the sanitizer down, and then they take probably very often the dirtiest cloth possible, and they basically wipe. And then they go on and do another 5 tables with the same cloth without rinsing it. And all they've done is effectively, they haven't sanitised that table. All they've done is move around the dirty conditions, and they've transferred it even further throughout the restaurant. So again, it comes to the correct protocols of how you clean. In other words, using, as Denise says, the correct cloth should only be used. And it's also, again, it comes back to contact time. I mean, sanitisers, it range from anything from 30 seconds to a minute to 5 minutes, depending on the degree of cleaning that you require. The standard sort of sanitisation in a food environment, in a dining environment, would be 30 seconds. I would strongly challenge whether we even get 30 seconds for our sanitisers to effectively, because they spray it on and they wipe it off. Effectively, it hasn't had that, because the pressure, as we've indicated before, the pressure is to get tables turned over. It's about cost. It's about that spend. And the pressures are very, very difficult. And we understand that. So as a manufacturer, we're trying to create products that can work within those short time frames that they have for cleaning, particularly in a high turnover restaurant. However, there is a limit that you can go to before the product no longer becomes effective. And cloths play a big part, because if you spray onto a cloth, very often, depending on the type of cloth, it will actually hold the chemical in suspension. So therefore, when they come to wipe it, it actually doesn't do anything, because the chemical has not had time to work with the surface. And it's about contact time, whether it's 30 seconds, 1 minute or 5 minutes, again, depending on the task that is being asked to do, is paramount. And then you rinse off and allowing to air dry is paramount. We know that's not the case in restaurants. It's hard. It's a real challenge, but it is about limiting, what the number of products you use, to make sure that the staff are not confused about what they're using as well. And I think that's key as well. So often we'll go in and there is a plethora of products in the cleaning cupboard and of varying dates. And again, it's about education. And we see our role now very much at Evans as very much one as a consultative, educational, making sure that the cleaning teams are using our products in the best way possible, because it's in our interests. Because the last thing we want, as Denise says, is that we come back and say your chemicals don't work. The chemicals very often do work, but it's just they're not being worked in the right environment. And that comes down to training. It comes down all the time down to training.
The worst scenario I've ever found was called to a site, and they were using the carpet extraction product in the bakery. And when we sort of said, well, why would you do that? Well, it smells of apples, so it must be a food product. And it all comes back to that training. So, one of the floor maintainers on the market is pink. So they were using that in a washroom because it must be a washroom product because it's pink. Just thinking, we really need to do a bit more training about this. But it's about minimising the products that you need so that you can train properly on them and they can get a good base and clean as they should do. Because nobody wants to go to work and do a poor job. They want to go and do a good job. But to do that, they need the product range and they need the training.
As we've already discussed briefly, the responsibility for infection prevention doesn't lie solely with the cleaning teams. The users obviously have a responsibility to wash and dry their hands correctly. So what can businesses do to encourage good hand hygiene compliance?
I think, to be fair, you've mentioned a few times a good range of hand care. That makes such a difference. When you go in, I won't use the brands, but you go in and you see those, you automatically think, oh, good, and I can use the hand cream afterwards.
I think as well, it's about the signage as well. It's encouraging people. So you've got easy access to hand sanitizers at entry points, particularly in reception areas, in and out of offices, nice at entry and exit points, particularly nearby washrooms. Food server areas in an office where you've got canteen, point of entry into the canteen, encouraging people, good signs. We have a range of skincare products where we have skincare boards. It talks, and very much it's all about imagery, and it takes them through the 5 good hand hygiene protocols about how effectively to look at, use the products. But I think also it encourages people to actively use the product. If you make it ease of access, people will use products. Also nice products as well. People then feel valued, that their employer thinks enough of them to spend the money on nice products. Also, when you go into a restaurant washroom, if you see nice products, then you're more likely to use them because you will try. You get people, oh, I like the smell of that. I will go in and try the product. I like the feel of that skin conditioner on my hands. I'll actually go in and repeatedly use it. So from that perspective, I think it's really important to offer good quality signage, but also ease of access. You will then always get people more likely to use the products.
And silly things like making sure that you've got accessible sinks, so that they're at different rates and heights if it's in a school.
Yeah.
So you've got a good product, as you say, that something that smells nice.
Yes.
We still are very much so it makes a real difference about people continuing to use them.
Yeah.
I was going to say fragrance can play a really big part, can't it? What sort of fragrances should people be using?
It's an interesting one, this. Fragrance, we have to be careful because as a manufacturer, yes, we have to put fragrance in certain products. You would never put fragrance in a food prep or any product being used in a food preparation or where food is being handled. Because obviously you've got food tainting, contamination of food, etc., potentially the transfer of the fragrance into the food. But certainly front of house, people have a very high expectation. They want to walk into, if you check into a hotel and you use the washrooms, you want to sort of feel, wow, that feels clean. And it's the perception of cleanliness. And certain fragrances, you have the old traditional, the lemons, the pine oils, the sort of the heavier sort of pine oil based, used to be the traditional fragrances used in the industry, and what we're seeing now is much lighter, more floral based fragrances, but also more natural fragrances, not so much, and again it's all about allergen, cruelty free type products, where people have an expectation. They have the nice fragrances they use at home, but they now want that when they're away from home. So they would like to see things like the sort of the less heavier fragrances. Nobody really wants to walk into a sort of a very smart hotel washroom and smell bleach. That sort of, it's a very institutional smell, and that's a sort of bit of a no-no now. So people want to walk in and smell sort of nice sandalwoods, nice bergamots, rose, light sort of fragrances now. And also from manufacturing, the supply chain, we are seeing more and more move away from the heavy, what we call petrochemical, the heavy pine oils. They're prohibitively expensive, and also from an environmental impact, they are not as favourable as they once were. So we're tending to look at the more natural trending fragrances. So fragrances that we're seeing in the retail consumer market are actually moving and transferring into the away from home market.
And also the heavy fragrances tend to mask a problem. You don't want to mask the issue, because sometimes you go in and think, what's the problem then?
Yeah.
So the lighter ones, you tend to get more impression that it's clean, it's fresh.
Yeah, fragrance should never be used to disguise cleanliness, for good hygiene practice. And I think that's the danger, is that people think if it's heavily fragranced, then sometimes at the back of your mind, you think, ooh, is this masking something? So the issue should be very much, it should feel clean on initial perception, and you should have just a sort of hint of fragrance, just to give that nice perception that you feel something's been worked on, it's been cleaned, etc. But it should never be overpowering as well.
Generally speaking, we would say that if there's the heavy fragrance, there's an issue. So if you've got the lighter fragrances, you're not masking a problem. People don't as well want to be able to go into a washroom and then come out smelling that way.
No.
All day.
Yeah.
So there is a very
it's a balance. It's a balance because, you know, when you're in a hotel, you want to have the cleaning utilities team, because they obviously get checked based on their cleaning ability and performance. They then get the rooms are checked off, and they want to be able to say, well, it's, you know, I've definitely worked this room, I've cleaned it, etc., but not at the expense of the actual cleanliness in terms of the disinfection. And I think that's where the challenges from a manufacturing perspective is that we still, fragrances used also have to work with the active ingredients. And some fragrances actually can inhibit the actual active ingredients, which is what we don't want it to do. So not all fragrances are suitable. So it's a careful process, choosing fragrances to go into products.
And also you don't want fragrances that clash.
Yeah.
Because if you've got two heavily fragranced products, he's not very pleasant.
No.
But certainly, you know, as you were saying, hotel rooms, if there's one in the toilet and washroom and one in the room itself.
That's right, the air freshener, you don't want it to clash.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because then when you walk in, you're like, whoa.
Yeah,
and also it's as well looking at the demographics in a hotel. I mean, during the week, very often it's business travellers. And without shadow of a doubt, it's still a high percentage of male business travellers. And the last thing, if you're checking into a hotel guest room as a male, that you have this very powerful floral fragrance hit you as you open the door, that's probably the last thing. So it tends to be a bit more of a generic fragrance, so it's almost like gender free,
gender neutral.
Yeah, gender neutral. And again, that's quite a challenge. If whilst in a school, you will potentially maybe go for a stronger fragrance, because generally it's an older building sometimes. You've got more challenges with pipe work, etc. So, you know, when you're dealing with probably malodors that have been there for a long time, potentially even centuries. If we look at a lot of places in London, the pipe work dates back to the Victorian times, and that has challenges, you know, as to what products, because you're dealing with a number of already pre-existing issues, which unfortunately come back up through drains, etc.
Say actually, cleaning practice is more important than how it smells, because if you clean well, you shouldn't have the odour left at the end of it.
Yeah.
So moving on from looking at infection prevention and control to more general health and safety challenges, what would you say those are when it comes to cleaning and maintaining a washroom?
Sometimes it's down to the damage in the washroom, because often you get, and this is where if you can get an FM team working together so that the cleaning team can actually report back to the harder services, they can stop problems early. Because if you've got a broken seat or something that just needs tightening, and stop it there rather than it then becoming a real problem, it is key. So the communication can be really key there. If you've got a broken tile, if you've got a slip problem, all those little bits that can be reported, the cleaning team are normally the first people that actually notice something that's wrong. Getting that communication back and not hearing the words, it's only a cleaner.
Yeah.
You know, so getting those people to actually report and feel part of the whole and understand that what they can do is actually far more. You know, we'd got a beautiful new floor laid, but they hadn't sealed it properly. Now, the cleaning team, fortunately, had reported and kept comments there. They were then told they'd put too much water down. Well, no, the seal isn't there. There was no seal on the join. But if they hadn't had the record of doing that, it would have been, oh, well, you damaged it. No, we did know what we were doing. And there is a real level sometimes of people not taking it seriously because it's the cleaners that have told me.
I think it's to reiterate what Denise is saying there, I think the washroom tends to be, it's hidden. So it tends to be given less sort of priority, which is I don't think is as bad as it once was, because people now, and whether you're an employer or whether you're a hotel, restaurant, office, people realise now that when people spend a long time away from home, you know, we spend on average something in the UK 12 hours in our time away from home. That's just in the office. We work longer hours than some of our European colleagues. And it's, I think the washroom, when you think about it, you're going to visit it at least a minimum 4 to 5 times a day. And I think if that experience is not pleasant, then you will tend to avoid it. And it's very sad that in the UK schools today, that an unfortunate high proportion of children will actively not drink water during the school day because they want to avoid going to their school toilet or school washroom, because for a number of social issues, but also from a cleanliness, they just feel it's just not a safe place, which is not good, but also it is not even clean to start with. It's just not given the priority that it should do, and therefore we're even at a very early age in the education process, we're engendering this a viewpoint that washrooms are not very pleasant places. Therefore, we're not actively allowing our children coming up through to actually practice good hand hygiene and good washroom habits. And unfortunately, that takes them very often into their adult life before they start to understand the consequences of that.
I think also with the washrooms, certainly we had a client to the college, and they put a cleaning operative going around during the day, all day, just around the toilets. And what it did stop then, it stopped the graffiti, it stopped the damage, it stopped the vandalism, because the students got to know the lady that was the cleaning operative. It wasn't at the Cinderella service where you never saw it. They saw this lady every day, she spoke to them, she actually was a valued part of what they did, and it really helped in actually stopping vandalism on a site. Now, okay, they've got the job, they've got the cost of that, but when they added up the cost of the cleaning and what they were getting for that, they were actually saving that whole cost on not having to replace toilet seats or repair vandalism. So it can be a really different shift to actually get an end result.
It also, by having pleasant washrooms and having good quality products available, skincare products, and just generally having a fresh, nice environment, you will generally, your staff you'll have higher productivity. There'll be less absenteeism. They'll feel more valued. So therefore, they'll feel more endeared to that business. And if it's a restaurant as well, they're more likely to go back as well. You're not going to go back to a restaurant because the toilets were pretty shabby. And also, I think the challenge for some restaurants is that the washrooms tend to be quite a distance from the dining area. You have to go up or down several stairs, and that in itself sometimes doesn't help. Because how many of us have come into a restaurant and we come straight off shopping or in the street or from the car, and we just sit at our table, when really ultimately we probably should go and wash our hands before actually eating. And again, it's just making that whole experience easy, and accessibility I think is paramount.
Circling back to training, apart from improving the health and safety of users to the washroom, what other benefits can effective training have for the business and the cleaning operative?
It's huge, if I'm honest, because if you do train somebody properly, when you're doing the training, you can see that spark sometimes. So from a cleaning company's point of view, you can identify your next management, your next supervisory staff, from training on a base level with the operatives. But for the operative, they're actually getting something. And people, anybody can clean. Well, actually, the whole idea is to clean to a standard so that the operative's safe and that the job is done efficiently and effectively. It makes such a difference to, one, their attendance, so you can cut down your sick leave, two, your churn, so they don't leave as often because they see that there's a progression and there's actually something there for them to learn with. But also the results you get, because diluting properly is so key, and most people, if they haven't been trained, use the glug method.
Yes.
So we'll put one glug in, or we'll put two glugs in, and they don't understand why not. So taking the time to train somebody and say, well, actually it doesn't work. The product is too weak, too strong. This is how you get your infections, how the bugs get resistant to the product, how they can actually do things, and also the impact you have as the operative. Just making them feel valued, because it is a job where normally we go in out of hours, early morning, late at night, nobody sees you. You'll get people say, oh, you're a cleaner? No, I'm a cleaning operative. This is what I do for a living. And you can have a really good career, but only if you've got those building blocks. And training is one of those first blocks.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a cleaning operative in the UK in particular, and it's not viewed as a career. yet we would be half our hotels, half our installations would be closed down if we didn't have cleaning teams. They're very much the hidden, as Denise put it, the Cinderellas of our industry, but they are vital. They are the difference between a restaurant remaining open, a food facility remaining open, a hospital having to close down a ward or not. That is how crucial those teams are. And as a manufacturer, we always, as part of our training, whether it's COSH or risk assessment, but how to use our products correctly, is that we spend a lot of one-to-one time. We see that as a crucial part of our responsibility to ensure that our products are used in the effective manner. And also it means that we also then get repeat sales, I'll be honest, because the products are used efficiently. Therefore, the cleaning teams don't have to rework. Their productivity goes up. If it's a facilities management team, they then get bonuses from their client because they're able to efficiently clean. They don't get ticketed with non-compliances because the washrooms are effectively cleaned. They don't get complaints from the operatives of that client about the cleaning teams. So as Denise was saying earlier about broken tiles, faulty taps, if you have a good valued FM team in an office building, and they report these and they're being proactive, then they tend to hold on to contracts a lot longer.
You've touched on a few things there with the training. One, it cuts down your chemical costs because they're diluting properly, so it costs less. Two, they're taught to look after the machinery and what can and can't go through the machinery. So your machinery lasts longer. And so often when people look at the budgets, they'll cut the training. And actually, if they put the training in place and drive it through right from the start, it actually saves on so many different levels. Because most of your contracts are 3 years, maybe with an additional 2. Well, you write your equipment off over 3 years. But if you then get another 2 years out of that, and they've looked after it and it's fit for purpose, you're rolling into another 2 years of profit. And it's that operative actually taking the care, and they need to be trained to do that. And earlier you said, we tell to people when they come and say, I'm only a cleaner. No, you're a cleaning operative, and without us, you can't walk down the streets get cleaned. You can't catch a bus, the buses get cleaned. You can't send your children to school, they get cleaned. Go shopping, the shops get cleaned. If you're in hospital, we hope they're cleaned.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, if you're in a large office block and you're the general manager, nobody's going to notice if you're out for the day. If you're the washroom cleaning operative, everybody's going to notice if you miss a day.
Especially if it's not been cleaned, it's the first thing that will be complained about. Yeah. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. It will be the first point of complaint is the washroom. And you see it in a lot of social media reviews. It very often sometimes is food, but also is about the washroom as well. So people are very much we are very much more demanding as consumers. We have high expectations of cleanliness, but we sometimes don't always want to pay for that cost. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is that sort of efficiency of cleaning against cost available. And it will always be there. And I think, if anything, it's like, how do we look at innovation? How can it be made better? How can it be made more efficient without compromising the overall purpose of what the chemical is due to do? In other words, disinfect, sanitize, and clean.
The quality of the end result is really dependent on the amount of time you spend training that person. So people say, well, if I train them and they leave, well, how about you don't train them and they stay? It's a lot more damaging. And having that basic training, having people being able on site to cascade training, because best will in the world, you go in and spend a lot of time, but then somebody new starts. So you need people on site that can actually pass the training down. It needs to be a cascade model. And it's not the case that anybody can clean, or even anybody can clean everything. We know the specialists when people say cleaning isn't technical. Come and do a wooden floor with us. Come and do a marble floor with us. Come and do upholstery and carpets properly. There's lots of technical parts to cleaning. And people still see the lady with the curlers and
the mop bucket, the string mop bucket.
And just thinking that isn't and hasn't been our industry.
It can be so further from the truth nowadays. Yeah. It's a huge part of our industry, There is a vast amount of money spent on cleaning chemicals, but it's making sure when we are advising end users, we go in and actually do a thorough site survey of their surfaces, of the environment. We speak to the cleaning utilities team. We don't need to speak to the manager, front of house manager. We want to speak to the cleaning teams. We want to understand what they like and what they don't like, what their challenges are. We ask them to show us, and then we can then advise the most suitable products. Because the last thing we want is for our products coming back and saying, they're not working, they're not effective. We've still got problems with limescale. We've still got problems with discoloration in the toilet bowl. So that is critical as part very much the pre-assessment. And then we give our advice, and then we do the training. We will very often sometimes do trials, because at the end of the time, you want your cleaning teams to engage with your products. So we are more than happy to, offer trials, train, and then basically we move on so that we get total engagement with the cleaning teams.
So let's take a look now at the latest trends and developments in the marketplace. Based on your own experiences, what are you seeing at the moment?
We're starting to work with people that are using the sensors for the buildings, so they don't need to check the washrooms every hour. They can see automatically whether they've been used or not. And there are real savings with some of these ideas, but it's actually getting people to understand that just saving 15 minutes a day isn't really an impact on our industry, because my operative wants to go for a 2-hour job or a 3-hour job. They don't want 15 minutes less. So it's working that around to what else can you do in that time? Can we offer another service? We've been talking about sanitisation. Is there an outbreak? Could that operative in 15 minutes disinfect all the handrails, touch points, lift buttons on their area? So finding something that works in there. It's key that we can actually talk about what is in the industry, not just about the new developments, because so much is being developed and it's wonderful and it's all techie, so I'll never be there really. But how can we actually put it across the industry so everybody gets some benefit from it?
Yeah, I think the whole Internet of Things is the latest buzzword. Within certain industries already, the paper industry, it's already happened. You have devices, dispensers enabled, Wi-Fi enabled. They can give you a raft of data information in terms of not just how many people have used, how many hand towels, how many times people have visited that washroom with door sensors, etc. We've seen it and it's been around for a long time, but what we are seeing now is a refinement. And from a chemical perspective, whilst it's difficult to enable a 5 litre of general floor cleaner, but what we are seeing is where we have the opportunities in larger installations or larger facilities is that very much the use of what we call water-fed auto-dosing equipment. So you're taking the product, it's highly concentrated, and again that's got challenges in terms of you're now using much more concentrated products. You've got reduced packaging, so effectively you may have a 1 litre super concentrate, and from that you will get 100 trigger sprays being used through a auto-dosed device. In other words, you're making it safe. The cleaning operative is not coming into contact with the chemical. The chemical is actually being dosed automatically at a pre-determined dilution to work effectively for the task it's required. So for example, if it's a sanitizer, there will be a specific dilution rate which the actual wall-mounted device will be set up for, and that will be installed by an engineer. And we're seeing that trend is growing much more. And the type of those auto-dosing dispensing solutions are becoming more refined. They're becoming smaller. And we talked earlier about the lack of storage and what we call domestic service points. So these kind of auto-dosing pieces of kit have to be a lot slimmer. They have to be going into small areas. We've got different types. You have water-fed and non-water-fed, again suiting different operations as well. So again, we're seeing the emergence of much more demand for super concentrates. The challenge with super concentrates is when it comes down to risk assessment. Soon as you start concentrating up a chemical, then there has greater potential risk assessment. So again, it gets back to training. and risk assessment and cost training becomes even more paramount. And it is by law the owner's responsibility when you employ even 1 or 2 cleaning, you must train your people in safe, cost and risk assessment of any chemical before they begin to pick it up and clean with it. And I can't stress that enough. But very much concentrated reduction of packaging, because obviously we've got to try and look at post-plastic disposal. So you're using, instead of buying potentially 100 trigger sprays ready to use, you're now buying 1 litre, but you're dosing it through a closed device to make it safe for the operative, so they're not coming into contact with the chemical, but they're getting the optimum. So it takes away thinking about, Denise was talking about earlier, the glug factor. We're taking away all that as well, because basically it's they take their trigger spray to the water fed unit, pop it down, press the button, and they've got ready to use chemical, which is properly diluted. There's no glug factor. It's all been pre-metered. Also speeds up the whole process, so they're not having to wonder about how much do I put in, how much don't I, into the bucket, how much do I put into the scrubber dryer. It's basically all predetermined through the auto-dosing unit. So we're seeing a much more demand for that type of operation. It's not for everybody, because it tends to be for the larger, as I say, facilities. So therefore we have the non-water fed, which can be either on the move. In other words, you have a device that goes over the 5 litre or the 1 litre product, and basically it mixes again at the predetermined dilution rate. Again, reducing plastics. The whole purpose as well is to make sure that the cleaning teams can get on with their jobs, don't have to worry about working out dilutions, and that they've got the product that should do the job it's supposed to do. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of. And the innovations are definitely, if you go to the cleaning show at Amsterdam, which was 2 years, and then the next one's next year, 2020, and at the cleaning show just recently in London in March, there was a lot of innovation shown about how this is actually moving forward. And for us as a chemical manufacturer, any new products now, we look at the type of packaging. Packaging now is paramount as to how we safely house a product, but also how to safely transport it, and also how can it be used at the other end as well. So because it's going through a number of different transportation challenges, shall we say. So it's got to be safe, but it's also got to do the job it's designed to do as well.
How does the trend for sustainability fit into that?
It's an interesting topic. There's a lot of debate going on in the chemical industry about how can we move our packaging to be more sustainable. In other words, how can we move our containers that we house our chemicals in, whether it's 5 litres or trigger sprays, to be more contain much higher grades, percentages of recycled material, which is great, because we've just recently moved over all our skincare 500ml hand pump skincare products over to 25% recycled material. But the challenge is not all chemicals you can go 100% recycled, because the 100% recycled container cannot actually go into a food service environment, for very good reasons, because it basically wouldn't last. Also, it can actually contaminate the very surfaces that you're trying to disinfect against.
So I think, as you've just said there, we need to look at the true life costs of products, because often people will buy something that's cheap and supposedly cheerful, rather than looking at the long-term view. So if you look at a mop and bucket, you can buy the small little socket mop, £3.20, or you can buy a decent mop and bucket that will last 5 to 7 years. Buying the decent product, if you've got the contract that's 3 years long, you're not going to replace it. You're going to cut down the visits from the deliveries, the carbon impact, all the other costs, the packaging costs of how things comes wrapped. People need to look more clearly at what the whole cost is, rather than just developing, well, this fits in. And procurement really need to talk to the end users, which often doesn't happen. Yeah. You know, this is the cheapest bag I can get, but that means as a cleaning operative I'm using 3 because the cheap bag won't contain my litter. And there's a breakdown sometimes where people are talking that way, and I think that's more sustainable to maybe pay the higher initial cost.
Denise, what changes are you seeing in terms of training at the moment?
We're seeing some real changes with a lot of online options, and people keep challenging us, when are we going online? And we do have certain online options available, but if I'm really honest, if I'm going to spend £14,000 on a scrubber dryer, I'm not going to let you watch a YouTube video and then drive it. So there's some things that need hands-on training. We do cascade training models rather than everybody coming to us. The idea is that you train in your company and you train as part of people's jobs. The online options, the COSH, the different levels on that are great, and they're really sustainable because people aren't travelling, they can do it at home. Managers don't have to go out on site at 4 in the morning to deliver it. So there's lots of pluses, but there really is no substitute for somebody actually showing you what you should do properly, and then you showing them back, because then you know they've actually got the points and they're going to do it.
I think I would agree with Denise. Training, whilst people are more internet ready, it will never really totally, I think, online portals. And at Evans we have two. We have an eLearn COSH, which is undergoing, and it's ROSPA approved. And they come out with a accreditation, an industry recognised accreditation. But we also have developed, probably more importantly, a risk assessment portal, which based around only our Evans products. But that is key, and what it's doing is encouraging what employers need to do in terms of, before their people, either cleaning operatives or any staff members, use or pick up a product, that they safely understand what PPE, personal protection equipment, is required for the task. So, for example, if you're using a washroom cleaner in a hotel bathroom, 9 times out of 10 it doesn't have a window, so it's poorly ventilated. If you're doing maybe 14, 15 rooms using certain products and you're slightly asthmatic, that you will have a higher risk assessment for that product than maybe one of the other operatives who doesn't maybe have a respiratory problem. So part of the Evans risk assessment portal is very much geared around basing around, they can tick the Evans products they use, and then what it will do is, based on the devices and the PPE that the employer has made available, and any form of training or devices like we've talked about, auto-dosing equipment, will lessen the risk assessment. But what that does is, it means they can have a complete risk assessment report for every form of chemical they use from Evans. And I have to stress, it is only based on our Evans Vanodine products. And it is only a guide as well, because by law, an employer has to undertake a risk assessment where chemicals, any form of cleaning chemical is used in their premises. But again, it won't overtake the point that I have a team of 6 area sales managers. They go out one-to-one. So whenever we're doing a mobilisation or an onboarding with an end user, they will generally go out first. And it's almost like train the trainer. So if we have a multi-site rollout, our team of area sales managers will go out and train perhaps the regional trainer in that area, and then they will cascade outwards. But we will also reinforce with revisits and encourage people to obviously go and use our portals as well. Portals, I think, have got their place, particularly where you've got multiple satellites. So you've got large areas where maybe not everybody is working at the same hours. They could be potentially only coming in for 2 hours between 4 in the morning and 6. That's quite a challenge. So again, it's making sure that the trainer, the main designated trainer, is fully aware. They can either train or they can go into the portal, and at their break times or offline, they can then go in and do their online training. So I think, again, it's part of a process, and it's another tier, isn't it, Denise?
It's a great support network. Yeah. So the online can really support and can actually show you as a refresher. But if you've never done something, it's really valuable to have that one-on-one, to have somebody actually physically show you. And if you've got any questions, you can ask. And I'm sure you can probably type into the online portals your questions, but I quite like talking to people.
Yeah.
So over the next 10 years or so, where do you think the washroom hygiene sector will go next in terms of innovations?
We're quite a traditional industry. I mean, I think because as we're finding, it's become more heavily regulated, and as the regulations become more complex, then in terms of innovation, probably you'll see different styles of products. You'll perhaps potentially see as well with biocidal product regulations a reduction in the range of products, because no longer will you have cleaner sanitizers, cleaner disinfectants. What you'll see emerging is particularly more dedicated disinfectants or more dedicated sanitizers. And what that means is that the industry, the cleaning industry, will have to undergo a change in terms of their cleaning processes, because you won't have what we call in the past dual products. So a sanitizer will do a sanitization process, but not necessarily be clean. So therefore you have to do the two-stage. So I think we'll see changes there in terms of the products available in the market with just as a result of regulation. And also as the manufacture of different active ingredients changes. In other words, we look at where raw materials are sourced. Some raw materials will be no longer available, and quite rightly so, because of the impact in terms of the extraction and the source of where they're coming from is no longer viable, nor is it good for a sustainability point of view, because it's impacting on the environment. And that's probably the biggest area. As manufacturers, we have to address our whole supply chain, where products are coming from, making sure that the products are coming from a sustainable source, that they're reducing as far as possible the environment. And again, it's looking at the devices. We talked about the Internet of Things very briefly. I think from a chemical perspective, we are beginning to see the opportunities where we can, but it will be generally through a auto-dosing system in terms of how much you're getting. So the cost per use is emerging. And it's interesting because coupled with the packaging as well, we're probably going to see a lot less packaging in our industry. So, but we'll be transporting more chemical, but in less packaging ultimately.
I think for me, it's concentrating on the people again. In the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot more robotics. We're going to see a lot more innovation, which is a buzzword really. But you can't really take that robotic system or solution into a washroom. So for washrooms, you've got the people involved in actually cleaning them. I'd like to see more recognition for those people. I'd like to see a recognition of the skill level they have by actually getting people to understand what people do, because there is a shortage in the cleaning industry. There's been a shortage of good labour for a very long time. And that isn't going to get easier, I don't believe, over the next 10 years. So if the robotics can come in and do the floor cleaning and do the general areas, we can then concentrate on the washroom cleaning. And having people accept that it's important. You know, you've said yourself, the outbreaks, how does it impact, what can we change? Getting that recognition that this is an important role, that this is an important job, that if you don't do it properly, it affects your business, would be key in the next few years. We've got the monitors, as you say, in the paper dispensers. We've got monitors in the rooms, how many people have been in them. All that will build together to make it a more slick operation, so we can put the time where we need to. But I think actually concentrating on washrooms as a key area could have benefits right the way across our industry.
Yeah. I think as well it's using the lowest impact product for the environment without compromising the actual cleaning ability. And as Denise says, recognising the teams, the cleaning teams, making their jobs easier, getting the productivity improved, the efficiency, so they're not going back to rework, will always remain the same. So whilst it would be nice to see lots of sort of automated processes, I think the actual process of actual physically cleaning, particularly in certain what we call hygiene critical areas like hospitals, food prep areas, is a lot more challenging because it needs a more niche and more specialised cleaning process. So I don't see that being taken over by robotics. What I do see is the method of dispensing and dilution, taking away the thinking behind.
Taking the error option
Taking away the error is paramount, I think, to making a much more efficient cleaning industry and making it more attractive for people to come into the industry as well, giving it recognition, I think, as Denise says, is absolutely paramount, because if not, a lot of our restaurants wouldn't be open today, or a lot of our hospitals wouldn't be open, schools, etc. So cleanliness in the away from home environment is absolutely paramount, and it's down to our cleaning teams.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on, actually. I think we've covered a lot of subjects there today. So just to say thanks very much for watching, and thanks to Denise of the British Institute of Cleaning Science and Nikki of Evans Vanodine for joining us today. There will be a full write-up on the website and also in the magazine. Thanks for watching.